So, different point of views. I start with Monica because you have now a new topic, let me say, that you will deepen in the workshop in the afternoon. And so for me it's very interesting to know from your point of view, Monica. Maybe I have to introduce you in a few words. You worked in different organizations on an international level. At the beginning as a junior manager, afterwards a senior manager, and last time as a director in the human resources mainly, I think. And you were responsible for programs on an international level where people are involved in changes. Is that right?
Yes.
What kind of changes?
So different kinds of changes. So I think mainly reorganization, including downsizing, but also implementing cost efficiency programs, for example, implementing new performance management systems, changes regarding cultural changes. So that was it mainly.
Cultural change, which kind of cultural change from to?
From to, for example, when I was working for a pharmaceutical industry, 10 years ago or so, when they get a little bit more pressure from politics, they started to rethink about their strategy. So they started changing the strategy, and we had to deal with the related structural and cultural issues that time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and in your workshop afterwards you will talk about what?
Yeah, I think you mentioned in the morning already that it's necessary really to involve management team. We have heard a lot about the top management team, and I believe meanwhile change management graduated to the agenda of the top management team. But you mentioned already the mid-level management. We have maybe in the future differentiate a little bit more about the different roles and the emotions which are associated and where people are in the process. And my hypothesis is really that mid-level management is not that much willing and do not have the necessary competencies really to follow all these different aspects. And I think it's not only one change they have to deal with. I think it's more complex meanwhile, and they suffer maybe also from their history. And they are also so much involved that they are in fear really to lose their job. So I think it's a complexity, and it's the history and the multiple changes, the competencies they have to approach, and that's why my focus in today's speech is really what does it mean to manage change on a mid-level as well for the top management team. What do they have to reflect really to keep them engaged for the future?
Okay, thank you. And you heard this morning this, yes, Georg, you want to...
So you're talking about sandwich management.
Right,
so a little bit,
right,
yeah.
right.
You heard this morning now this three different speeches, and do you have the impression that when we talk about resistance and how to manage resistance, was there something new for you that you heard this morning? For example, when you heard that the terrorist is part of the system?
Yeah, I think that's really a very powerful picture. And in many situations, mid-level management feels like terrorism. And I think they very often treat it like terrorism. But I don't think that this is really intentionally done by the top management team or other parts in the organization. What I was really impressed when I heard what the university did really in diagnosing the situation and then designing the process and be consequent to implement this. That's what I have missed over the past. My experience is that we do not have this thoughtfully diagnosed in the beginning, and maybe we have overlapping changes in the organizations. and we do not have the time, because what you mentioned in the morning, I think it really takes additional resources, extra time and focus. You mentioned the aspect you have to communicate. You can't over-communicate in this process. But all this needs extra time, and that's what I missed in my experience in the management team, that you get this extra time. And that's why I say it's not intentionally, to my experience, in many cases, it just happens.
Okay, so the enemy is not the terrorist, the enemy is time.
Time, resources.
Okay. For the university, time is no problem.
Well, time in itself would not be a problem. It's just the money running out, which then produces some kind of a time issue.
A pressure.
Yeah, sure. That's the point. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, maybe that you have also questions you want to ask, or that you want to give a feedback. For me, in the first speech, Georg started with an example with the Deutsche Bahn, with a new rail passing between villages and so on, and I missed a little bit the end of the story. So what I'm curious, what happened in this case when the success was first in a meeting that people are throwing the tomatoes on the manager, and this is perceived as success. But afterwards, I think, well, he has to get a shower to to get rid of the tomatoes. But what are the next steps, and what happened in this case? What is successful at the end? Because it's clear that if you have such a project that you have difficult times, you have to pass. But what is the thing that at the end you have success? And what is success? Is success that there's no railway, no high-speed railway, or is success that now there's last year or next year the inauguration of a new high-speed train? Because I think that success is also something, the perspective can be very different from one or the other.
So in this case, you need to have to negotiate with the people to buy their terrains, or to get some agreements about noise abatements with the regional authorities, and so you have to negotiate. And the main issue is when do you really start the negotiation process, and when do you make your proposals and your offers? If you make them in the stage of denial, it will not work. If you make them in the stage of anger, it will not work. So you have to understand when is the best moment to say, okay, and now you get this money for your terrain, now you get this money for that, oh, that's now the proposal we do. So it's like a tactical process where you have to understand that in the first session, it's not the right moment. It's like if you are meeting a new partner, it's not in the first day you say, okay, now let's have sex together exactly in the first 5 minutes. Yeah, so it's a process. I don't know what is your experience, but I think normally it doesn't work. So if not enough alcohol is in the game, yeah. Maybe the next generation is doing differently, but there are things where we all know that there's a process to take in account, and it's the same. This morning process goes through different stages, and success in different stages is, as in the other one, can be defined differently.
So yeah, if I understood it right, you think that many times people try to negotiate too soon, or to make proposals too soon, or that you have to wait and.
I would say they are coming with an intervention, so with something which is appropriate out of their perspective, because they are maybe far further or in another stage and do not understand the stage the people are in. And so understanding which is exactly the phase the other one is, and then making the right intervention. And first stage, the right intervention is to make people angry, to make them clear. Second stage is listen and not reacting. Third stage, and so on. And in the last stage, you come with an offer.
Okay, so from your point of view, it's not worth to push in a change situation.
It's to understand where people are standing and then making the right intervention.
Okay, thank you. Yes?
It was allowed to ask questions. Huh? Yeah. I'm thrilling. I have a question for Carolina. Thank you for your overview. If I listened carefully, you started with the influence of the press, which generated to a behavior, and then your conclusion was, let's reflect the behavior. Without going into the depth, I'm assured that your next research will be the second influence of the press, because the cynical way the press is dealing right now will also change. Can you maybe flirt a little bit to the new way how the press will handle the new...
Thank you for your question, but unfortunately I'm less optimistic than you are, because one of the trends that we see in the press beyond this subject, even in the information press, because I focus on the information press, meaning the serious press, it's that they sell more when they talk about scandals than when they talk about how well a CEO is behaving and motivating his people. So there's also this bias on what at least the press considers, is it true or is it not true from the reader's perspective, that should be confirmed. But the press somehow likes talking about the UBS case, talking about the Airbus case, talking about these different cases, and even a little bit increasing the reality so that people are shocked and so that they can have an emotional ingredient in the news. And unfortunately, all of us would love to have those humble, sincere, and open-minded and ethical CEOs, but this doesn't. It's not interesting for people when they read the news. So I'm less optimistic about that. But if CEOs are more aware about this reality, because of this arrogance and also the distance to the field they might have, which is a normal bias in CEOs. It's not because this disconnection that they can have with the field and with somehow the reality, if you let me say like this, it's part of the CEO job. But now, one of the competencies that is new for a CEO today is to be aware of it and to manage it, okay? Which was less of the case yesterday.
Maybe one additional comment. So when we're making changes with companies, we're talking about stakeholder management also. So employees, okay, tick in the box, you care about it. Your middle manager, top, yeah, okay, you care about that. Then okay, customers, yeah, we should inform them also on. We have some, let's say, different areas where managers are naturally thinking about what to care, and employees are, customers are. It starts to be more difficult when talking about suppliers. Yeah? Sometimes they're getting then an official letter of what changes, but they're not really involved in what is happening. And the press is dealt in a very strange way. So there is an official communication channel, let's say, but there is no, so beneath information there is no real dialogue with journalists. There is also not real dialogue with unions. It's always a negotiating part. So we are missing out of the, and sometimes to shareholder it can be strange sometimes too. Yeah. But the two big missing links is to the press, and the second one, which is also very critical, is to if there is a local community. So if there are, for example, job reductions in a site, having contact to the local mayors, having contact to the people in the region, which then are influencing also the press on the other side. So that's something we are missing, and we really have to finger point and say, hey, don't miss that one, and don't just do it with a press release. And so we have more a reaction which is surprising the people in the company instead of a proactive management. Yeah.
You mentioned, Mr. Kraus, that it's always an issue to identify at which stage the people in a change are. My experience is that all people have these stages, but everyone is in different stage. So it could be appropriate to use your example to ask in the very first minute if it's okay to have sex for someone, but for most it won't. So the problem is to get an invention that will get most of the people at a very early stage, and then tend to the ones who maybe need extra explanation or are at a later stage.
Which brings to the point, when is it important to separate the groups in the next dialogue processes, and when is it good to have them together? Yeah. There is, for example, in big changes, as let's say Stuttgart 21, for example, what is happening most in the cases when the group is in the anger phase, they are nominating someone as a representative of them, their group, who is the most in the highest anger. So that's typically, so the one who has the highest negative energy is the one who will be the leader for this time. What happens is that in most of the cases, the group is moving forward in the next stage, but the leader has his definition out of the phase he was taken. And now you have an issue, because your negotiation partner is the one who is still in a stage the group isn't anymore. Yeah? And then you have to think even differently. You have always to reflect, is the guys I'm talking with, is what they are talking still representative for the group? And how do I find new representatives for the group for the next stage? Yeah? And then maybe even dividing the group. Okay, these are the old ones still in the old stage, and these are the other one and the new ones. And this transition can be very tricky because the leaders are getting their, let's say, importance out of the stage they were coming and have difficulties to leave it, even if, let's say, from the mindset the group is already one stage further. And that's tricky, true.
Okay. Well, the discussion for me shows also that in every situation you have to deal with the complexity. That nothing is as simple as we can do it on slides, for example. That every time you have to deal with the complexity in this case, and then resistance we are talking about is part of this complexity, and you have to deal with this question here.
A question to all of you. You all mentioned the role of the managers to get management attention. And at that point, I'd like to pick up a sentence from Monica. If I understood you correctly, then you said that the complexity is something that might be a real issue. I agree. My point is that the managers are usually trained to reduce complexity. They need to decide something. Managing the change is just the opposite. It's complex by nature. So the question is, what do you think, how managers might be the right persons, the right people to address both sides of this complexity? To put one more, we in my firm we usually want managers to reduce complexity, to be able to reduce complexity, and the managers will be promoted furthest who best can reduce complexity. In such a climate, how is change possible?
Good question. I think I don't want it to say that you have to make things more complex than they are, but I think by nature change is complex. And I'm reflecting on both sides because you are personally, individually involved. When we are talking about emotions, for example, and in a management position, you are not only responsible for the emotions of your people, you're also responsible for your own emotions in these situations. And I think that's also referring to what you said, not to become cynical, for example. It takes time, really, to consider yourself, and I think we have to increase the competence of managers to deal with emotions on a personal, individual level and reflect where you are in this position, and then really to respond to what you see, what is going on in the organization and on your team. That's what I mean, what makes it really very, very complex in this situation. And managers are, at least in my experience, are technical experts. They are not trained, they are well educated, but they are not trained dealing with emotions in these situations.
Okay, thank you, Monica.
Maybe, so thank you. You're getting my €5 later for this question because it's a perfect question to he was ready to take just 5, yeah. So, no, in fact, you know, that's the reason. For example, consultants are most of the cases not good managers, and a lot of managers have problems also to be good consultants. These are two different views of the same thing. What I really like, so only change processes with change managers, consultants, whatever. Normally it doesn't work. We're analyzing, we're looking, we're bringing proposals, we're making the word complex, we're showing the different point of views. And sometimes we are analyzing so much that really coming to the point can be a missing thing. On the other side, the managers typically, so if we go in these prototypes, so in these prototypes, is focused, is going his way and wants to be result-oriented. And I think this partnership is one thing which is very good, and I like to propose to each manager to have internally someone, it could be the HR person, can be an internal change manager, can be an external consultant, to have someone who's always challenging him on these two aspects, getting an understanding and taking decisions, and these two poles have to be together. Otherwise, you are going at risk. And so this combination is a solution out of my situation.
Yeah, Carolina, you wanted to give your.
I just add something very, very quickly. It's also that management until now, and more so in industrial countries like Germany can be, are very analytical. When you are analytical, what do? You analyze things by dividing them into small parts. Why? Because you want to control things. Okay, that's what has been expected from them, and that's the way management has been taught for the last 100 years. Okay, and when we talk about differentiating leadership from management and training our people to leadership, that's what it means. It means being less analytical and being more able to lose control, to leave control. It's about taking things as they are emerging instead of wanting to control them. And this is a very specific competency, not easy to get, but it's possible because we teach it. We are also very leadership oriented, and it can be developed. But there's an issue also here about this new competency that allows managing complexity, but complexity to be managed needs to be simplified. If you're not able to, not oversimplified, but simplified.
Okay, my question to Axel is, because you heard now the comment from the HR, and you heard the comment from Carolina, and the comment from the consultant. You as a manager, what is your point of view?
That's right. Thank you very much. To put it in a nutshell, it would be coming from simplicity from the system as it was, going through complexity during the change process, but having the objective of making it even more simple in the end. So that is what we're trying, at least. It's exactly what you were describing, to reduce the processes, to reduce the departments, to make it much more clear in the end. But in order to get there, we had to change so many things. And at the same time, and I couldn't follow up through my speech with this, the school was, of course, running at the same time at their normal pace, or even had to speed up a bit. I mean, getting new students, teaching at a high level, doing research, etc. So in order to get there in the end, we had to go through a phase, or have to go through a phase of high complexity, changing and working and teaching and doing all those things at the same time, and getting there by, in the end, having much more simple, in new structures. So that would be my answer to it. But it's a very tricky job, I must say, and we probably also make many mistakes in those jobs because it's just too many things at the same time sometimes.
Okay, thank you. I think you have a lot of questions, and we have other opportunities in the afternoon, because now we have also to think about the lunch break. So you have the opportunity afterwards to deepen and to go into discussions with these 4 people here. And so I'm very happy that this is possible in the afternoon, that we can go in little groups and we can have discussions in these little groups in the workshops. And after the workshops we have a short coffee break, and then we come back in the plenary, and there's space also for all the questions you have that you have not the possibility in the workshop. Maybe that you are not in the workshop with the person. You have now one question left. So I invite you now to go into the lunch break, and we continue in 1 hour with the workshops. So thank you for this morning, for your speeches.